Episode 2 of Darling the Franxx lingers on honey with almost obsessive attention. After Hiro and Ichigo's brief exchange outside, we are led to the dining room. The scene begins with a static shot on some lamps. The next shot, a wide pan across the dining room, again features only static elements, with the sole exception of 02, whose dynamic movements throw her into sharp relief. From there, we cut to the reason why everyone was staring at 02: honey. This shot begins a series of shots in this scene that all feature honey. We get the reverse shot from 02's perspective of Miku's reaction, whose face appears behind the dripping honey. We cut to 02 consuming honey multiple times, sometimes in the background, sometimes as the sole focus. We even get a short exchange where 02 wipes the honey off her hands onto Zorome's attire. The scene is actually not the first time we've seen honey in the show. The opening, which played for the first time this episode, features honey dripping from 02's lips just before the chorus drop. One may wonder, why does this episode feature such a strange emphasis on honey? We get a hint of the answer in the elevator scene that follows. Nana's positioned at the far left of the frame, with 02 centered and the right side empty. Within this darkness, we see brief flashes of gold before a swishing sound and a cut to black brings us a bright golden light from the right, filling what was previously negative space. We cut to see the city inside the plantation, bathed in the same golden hues as 02's honey. 02 comments that this place is suffocating, a sentiment she expands upon in the next episode. During the balcony scene in episode 3, we get a more extended look at the city. From here, beyond the confines of the elevator windows, we see the gilded city in its full grandeur. A homogeneous cityscape stretches before us. From the shot here, we can see a hexagonal pattern on what appears to be a magma processing plant. In fact, hexagons can be seen everywhere in the plantation, from this exposed column from just a few moments ago, to the battle screens that Nana and Hachi use, to even the very top of the dome itself. This pervasive presence of hexagons, combined with the golden color palette and the frequency of honey, evoke the image of a beehive. Indeed, the city functions much like a beehive as well. Just like how bees extract nectar, a yellow-red substance found in flowers, and process it into honey, our plantations extract magma, another yellow-red substance, and process it into energy. A hive is not just this industrial system, however, it's also a social structure. Generally considered to be a homogeneous society, bees lack individuality and work solely for the betterment of the hive. Hence the term hive mind to describe a group that thinks together and is always on the same page. Indeed, the bee hierarchy can be mapped quite cleanly onto plantation society. Like the bees, we have a population that's split into 3 classes. We have the parasites, few in number, but capable of sexual expression, like the fertile drone bees. We have the majority of adults, uniform and monotonous, like the worker bees. Finally, we have the ape council, who rule from up on high, like the queen bees. What's more, a drone bee does not simply become a worker bee. They are biologically distinct organisms, which puts Zorome's dream of becoming an adult in, well, quite the precarious position. If the parallel holds, the adults and the children would not just be at different life stages, but rather their bodies would be fundamentally different. And if that's true, then the Ape Council may be something different again. Now we examine the thematic implications of a plantation society that's so heavily coded with bee motifs. Though this massive symbolic beehive is a breathtaking sight to behold, this shot here captures how it depreciates the value of the individual, our main duo a mere speck against the vast open space before us. This visual is contrasted by the dialogue where Hiro speaks of names, of a humanizing concept that places importance on the individual. The juxtaposition between image and sound amplifies both elements. Notice, however, that these roles reverse in the next moment. The visuals assert individuality while the dialogue denies it, as we see 02 step beyond the safety of the balcony. She dangles above the open space, threatening to be swallowed up by it, but still, her crossing of the guardrail asserts her individuality. Yet her dialogue speaks to the opposite, stating how once we die, we'll only be a statistic, as if confirming the meagerness of her existence above the vast, unchanging city. But as her later lines reveal, she clearly despises the status quo, even asking Hiro to run away with her, away from this place where the human is so insignificantly small against the backdrop of the eternal. It's no coincidence that she makes this proposal here, where she has taken steps beyond conformity, beyond what is safe. Once she hops back into the status quo, she retracts her offer. Let's take a closer look at her lines on the catwalk. More literally, she calls it a death-like city. 02 places the city along the same lines of death and stagnation we explored in our last video.
ここには空も海もない。
02 makes explicit reference to sky and ocean symbolism, or more precisely, the lack of these elements. This absence places the city in opposition to the freedom and rebirth these symbols represent.
どこにもつながってない。行き止まりの街。
A more literal translation is that the city isn't connected anywhere. Thematically, this lack of connection implies a city incapable of growth or change, perpetually stagnant. This interpretation is supported by the use of the verb tsunagate nai. Tsunagate nai is the negation of the present progressive form of the verb tsunagaru, which means to connect. Connection is central to both the Gion bird and FranXX piloting. In fact, tsunagaru is actually one of the two terms used for the FranXX connection process. The more jargon-like term is simply connecto, the katakana transliteration of connect.
それではコネクト開始。
But tsunagaru was used by Ichigo in her conversation with Hiro from the final scene in episode 2.
ヒロはつながることだけ意識して。
As the focus of the scene was on the emotional weight of connection, we can think of tsunagaru as being reserved for the more human, intimate side of partnering, as opposed to the more technical details of the FranXX. Indeed, the end of this scene leads into the title of the episode, which is tsunagaru toyu koto, or what it means to connect. Given the sexual coding of the Gion bird and FranXX piloting, we can treat tsunagaru as carrying these same sexual connotations within the show. The fact that the city is not connected then is tsunagate nai is quite telling. The city stands in opposition to the sexual imagery of the show. It stands alongside the barren, infertile wastelands. It is the lifeless land in the rainfall mist. It is the sterile desert existing in opposition to the fertile rain. There is no transformation to be had here. There is no rebirth to be had here. Now, as with almost all the symbols in the show, this connection isn't necessarily purely metaphorical. We might expect the city to be literally sterile, its inhabitants incapable of sexual reproduction. Indeed, this hypothesis would match our beehive analogy. The adults would be sterile, just like the sterile worker bees. When we read for symbolism, it is easy to treat each idea as independent. What does the flower represent? Or what does the picture book represent? But often the more telling question is how symbols relate to each other. Whether they reinforce each other, pull in different directions, or complicate as the story goes on. I think of symbols as living in a sort of ecosystem. A symbol is not decoded in a vacuum, but rather analyzed within the broader context of the story's thematic framework. Let us now place our beehive motif within the symbolic ecosystem that episode 1 was already beginning to build. Episode 1 began this network with birds and water and land. We can now add the honey and bee symbolism to this network of meaning. Unlike the ways in which freedom, sexuality, and rebirth support each other in episode 1, culminated in the climactic battle scene, bees and honey stand in opposition to these forces. They are like the land, stagnant and lifeless. The show has established a conflict at the symbolic level. So where then does 02 fall? Well, like most characters, her position is dynamic. She moves across the symbolic landscape over the course of her character arc. But let's focus on how she's framed right now, by this point in the narrative. On the one hand, she is Hiro's missing wing. She talks of the skies and the ocean. She stands on the other side of the railing, asking Hiro to run away with her. But remember how the previous episode began. Before we saw the city, before we discussed connection, the very first thing 02 is associated with in that episode is honey. It coats her food, covers her fingers. The symbol of the hive trickles down her lips. 02 then is not just some outside force here to upset the plantation. She is very much still a product of the system, which gives us an early hint for her motivation. As we will later learn, she kills Klaxosaurs because she's been told that killing Klaxosaurs is what will let her become a human. For all her signaling herself as an outsider, her motivation is still tainted by the plantation's motives. This tension in 02's iconography paves the way for her character journey, a topic we will explore in a future video.